Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show. On this podcast, you'll learn from professional players, coaches, and executives from all over the world and see the court in a brand new way. And now, joining you courtside, your Gen Z host, John Hartophilus.
Hiroki, my man, what's going on?
I'm doing stupendous, man. I'm feeding off your energy right now. I'm excited for this. I'm excited to talk some hoops.
That is the first stupendous I've ever received in 350 episodes. I've never gotten a stupendous before.
Hey,
so I'm fired up now. Like you said, I'm getting your energy up. You're getting my energy up. So I hope that our listeners aren't listening on headphones or on earbuds or anything. They don't make sure to put a warning label on the show. We might get a little loud or excited. This is going to be a lot of fun. I know it from the start. You're a young guy in the sports industry, killing it. So let's just dive right in. I'm going to talk all about this. I mean, first off, right, everyone's probably jumping in on the fact that you're with a team that was in the NBA Finals last year and you won every game in November. So everyone's probably talking about that stuff in your NBA job. But I want to take it all the way back and talk about, when you were younger, getting into the sports industry. How did that all go down for you?
Yeah, so I guess going all the way back. So we're kind of rewinding all the way back to when I was in high school. So when I was kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, practicality was something that really came to mind. At the time, it was just something where when I got out of school, I wanted to have something that was kind of like secure for me. So I chose computer science as a passion. In the back of my head, like I'd always kind of been thinking, like math, numbers, and sports, that would be something that'd be really cool to get into. But it was always felt like kind of a pipe dream for me. And then when I really kind of wanted to start gearing myself towards more of my interest was after my junior year of college. I had an internship with Expedia, which was out in Bellevue, Washington, and it just didn't go well. It wasn't necessarily the fault of anybody that was there, but it was just I really struggled at the time with it, more so than I felt like I should at like an internship. And then on top of that, I just didn't like what I was doing. So at that point, I was kind of like, what can I do with my degree at this point? Because I really didn't enjoy that very much. So my senior year, I geared myself my coursework and my project classes towards stuff that was in my interest wheelhouse. So that was game development and sports. So my capstone was actually in game development. It turned out okay anyway. So, but then after I graduated, I kind of was like, I want to get into one of these two fields. I got a little bit of a portfolio now in either one. The game development yielded absolutely no fruit. Just cold calling, sending out emails, stuff like that. It just didn't work. But finally, I was able to latch onto a sports data company out in Chicago called Stats as a software developer. In my time there, the job itself was basically just kind of like a filter of like a normal software job in the sense that like it was sports, but it was kind of like more sports tangential. It was just like the ad that it was sports, but the actual work I was doing is just normal software development work. But while I was there, I did my best to try to get involved with stuff that was kind of like more sports related. I was sitting in on meetings with like the data science group because I thought the predictive stuff that they were doing is really cool. Late when I was doing it, I ran a couple articles for like the company blog and stuff like that. I was helping with their daily fantasy projections before I started. And so all that stuff was really cool for me, a good experience. But at about like 3 years in, it was just about time for me to just kind of move on and just find something new. So I was actually on my way to a job interview with a place that was up in Milwaukee that was just a software company. When I got a Twitter DM out of the blue from a guy by the name of Sergio, and he basically was just reaching out and says, "Hey, we have a position that opened up with the Suns, our organization. We're going to change. Do you have any interest?" And so that was the thing that kind of got me interested. And I was like, heck yeah, this is amazing. It feels like a pipe dream and stuff like that. So went through the interviews process with that. As it turns out, the thing that kind of helped get me in was the fact that I had kind of been developing these back-end software development database type skills. And that's something that I'll always tell somebody that's like interested in getting into the industry is, I kind of stumbled, butt first into it, but you have to find a way to provide value to the company. And that was kind of what I was able to do. So I was lucky enough to get the position, and that's how I got it.
There is so much to unpack there, and it's gonna be a lot of fun going through because it's fun, and you're matching my energy, and I love when guys do that. So this is gonna be we're about to get right into it. But you mentioned the first, just from the start. I mean, I had to take notes right now because I need to make sure I didn't miss a beat. But one of the first things you mentioned was an internship you had that you really didn't enjoy, but you pivoted, right? And you realized that it was time to do that. Obviously, right, everything from that point on was a lot of fun. But obviously to get to that, you had to make that pivot and that was a big time decision for you. Like, how did that come about to say, you know what, it's time for me to do what I'm really passionate about instead of doing what, is still a good job, but it's not what I like?
Yeah, it's a good question. So actually, what part of it actually happened while I was at the internship with Expedia. So on my last day there, we basically kind of got like an individual review, each of us, and like got told if we got an internship offer back and stuff like that. I think the story was that we were kind of talking about it a couple of interns before, like a couple of days before like our last get together, if we would get offered back. And I was like, I really don't think I am. And then the other guy was like, oh, you'll be fine. They have like something like a 95% like bring back rate from their interns. And I didn't get brought back. So at that point I was like, well, confidence is running a little bit low now. But so I had to sit in with a guy by the name of Gino White, who's the director of our group at Expedia, who's just an awesome dude. And, he basically understood that I was struggling and I didn't do too well, but I kind of told him that I had an interest in stuff like sports. And like occasionally they had brought up stuff like the Dodgers and like USC football or something like that. And I would get involved with kind of talking about that. And so they saw that I had the interest in sports in general. And so I kind of told them that's what I kind of hope to do, is kind of bridge, that interest group. And he's like, well, probably what you want to do here is that you want to just try to find your way into the industry of sport as a whole. And then from there, you can kind of find your way, your path, try to move laterally in terms of something you might be more interested in. And so he brought up like a couple things like Nike or stuff like that. But that was the thing that kind of really got me thinking about, this might be something that's feasible. So let's try to go after that.
Awesome. So you had the belief there, right? But you needed the skill set for it. And you meant, so I knew you were talking about Sergio Santamaria when you mentioned Sergio by name, because I actually spoke to him last year. We did there was it wasn't for the show, surprisingly enough. It was actually before I started the show during COVID. It was a Zoom call for people to go into analytics and doing stuff like that. So I got to talk to him one-on-one. Yeah. Awesome guy. But you needed to be ready for that. Like, it wasn't just like you showed up and like, we kind of talked about this before we got on the show about how like, you don't just kind of show up and say, hey, can I get a job? And it just kind of happens. Like that kind of happens maybe in movies, even not in there. So like, how were you ready for that moment to come and that opportunity to go and grasp it?
Yeah. So as a preface to this, I owe a lot to him and the fact that I still to this day don't know exactly why he reached out to me specifically. But yeah, I would say I'm really lucky for that. I think that the biggest thing for me was when I was at Stats, and like I said, I kind of developed this almost like by accident, but I kind of got the exposure being part of like the software group, and not only just developing software, but kind of figuring out the quote unquote right way to do it. I think that was kind of like the big thing for me, was that a lot of the people that come into the industry maybe come from statistics backgrounds, from mathematically rigorous backgrounds, but kind of my niche was that I come from a computer science one. And so from that, I was able to, kind of bring a skill set that was simultaneously, the interest in sports and kind of like that sort of passion. But then also I had the professional skill set of being able to, develop a backend data pipeline and kind of like create a software architecture that our group can use. And so I'm very, very lucky, not only from the sense that I kind of got to work in sports, but that I also got a place where I can kind of have ownership over a software pipeline and kind of do more large scale work of that sort.
Definitely. No, so you really made sure that you had that background and you were well versed in it, because right, that's kind of what allowed that to happen for you. But I have to point out though, so all this tech stuff, maybe people might think like, you're not someone that wants to be on camera and do this sort of thing, but you have done it in the past, right? I saw that you did the Scarlet and Gray sports radio when you were at Ohio State, and you also did some media stuff covering doing the King James Gospel and all that stuff for the Caps. So you did some writing, you did some maybe speaking. Like, how did that go for you? And I mean, what was that like?
Yeah, I think for me, I was just always kind of fascinated in being able to get involved in the different facets of it as a whole. The blog thing happened because I had a couple friends that went to Ohio University and were part of like their Scripps journalism program there. And so one of them actually still writes for the SB Nation Cavs blog, Fear the Sword. And so, but at the time when he was doing Write Down Euclid and got name changed to King James Gospel. He basically said, I know you have the interest in basketball and stuff like that. Or do you have any interest in doing something like that? And at the time I was just like, heck yeah, anything within sports related that, is related to watching sports. I think I remember my favorite memory from that was that my friend Chris, the one that was the editor there, one of the articles he had me write was like a preview piece on Tyler Zeller. And I remember he just kept like, most of the times he was just kind of like, okay, pass these articles through, looks pretty good. Just go ahead and get it up on the site. But for this one, he just kept having me do revision over it. And I'm like, come on, man, it's a preview piece on this. And it's like, why do I have to keep revising this? But then it ended up getting linked to like the ESPN Cleveland page. And at the time I thought that was super cool. So that there was that. And then the sports radio was a thing. I wish I had started it sooner, but I started it my junior year. I don't know. I like to run my mouth, and I always thought the broadcast side of things was pretty cool too. So that was the thing I started to do there. Basketball was my favorite thing to do. And at the time, like getting over to the media room and eating hot dogs and drinking Coke before the games was like super cool for me.
Stock guys have the unfair label of being quiet and reserved, and thankfully you're not like that, and you have this energy with you, which is making the show a lot of fun. So this is great. I mean, it's really awesome that there's this energy back and forth. But thinking about, I mean, so you get the call from Sergio, you get all set up. Now you're with the Suns. Like, what were those first few days in the job like for you? In a role that, right, I'm guessing you're doing even more stuff than only dealing with numbers. I mean, with ops, like you're kind of doing everything.
Yeah, definitely. It was one of those things where I still felt like I was being punked until I was literally like in the office on the first day. Like it was just someone's going to pull the rug out from under me and be like, all right, it's just a prank, sort of thing. But no, kind of being in there, I think that the thing that was super cool for me is that I felt like I was really kind of accepted from day one. I came in as a basketball fan, but I wasn't, a rigorous basketball learner. I hadn't been, involved in like coaching and playing my whole life. Like you, I was, so I never made a team, but I got cut my 7th, 8th grade and then freshman year. And then I said, all right, it's probably not for me. And so I wasn't necessarily well-versed in the game of basketball. I didn't know what a pin down screen was coming into this, 2-man game was, things like that. But nevertheless, I still felt accepted, from the start. And I always felt like I could create an open dialogue with anybody within the front office. And then for me, it was pretty much hitting the ground running in terms of just kind of getting involved with the tech stack and, developing the software pipeline, which has been kind of like my baby over the first few years here, in addition to the other kind of more general analyst responsibilities.
Love it. So, right, you're putting your hands on all these different things. And I'm sure, right, how has your role maybe grown in those last years since you first started? I'm sure, right, like at the start, maybe you just had that one baby, but then you kind of branched off and doing some other things.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that for me, kind of like the big thing is I kind of briefly glossed over that I kind of had an architecture or that the software architecture thing. And that's been the biggest thing for me, is just kind of being able to overhaul the tech stack with here and then just kind of modernize it, get it to a point where, it's more fresh, cutting edge, and kind of in a position where, like, hypothetically years down the line, it's going to be something that's reusable, that something like that. It's kind of weird for me to talk about like elegant tech design in a basketball conversation, but that's like one of the things that's been big for me. And then past that, just kind of developing more of the knowledge within the language of basketball, getting more immersed in the game, being able to understand things that happen on the court more, and then kind of be able to tie that to analytics, right? I think that one of the things that people kind of critique analytics for at times is that, you see the game in a vacuum and, they don't understand like the human elements of it. But I think being here has been very, very good for me in terms of kind of being able to understand more of the practicality of it, once, just correlation, causation, things of that nature.
Really fascinating stuff. And all this, right, is super important into what, right, is maybe the most important thing in basketball, right, is the wins. And you've seen the team go from the bottom of the Western Conference to the top. And in doing so, you got to hug a pretty awesome inanimate object known as the Western Conference Finals trophy. Now, I need to ask you, what did that feel like to hug that trophy, like you posted on your Twitter account?
It was heavy. That's
really?
my biggest thing. Yeah. That's my biggest takeaway from that. It was a lot heavier than I thought it would be. No, it was definitely a special moment. I think I'm infinitesimally lucky to be a part of this group. Coming in, I just felt incredibly blessed to be a part of, any organization, but to see how it's grown and to see the good people that we have in our group, just top to bottom, like be able to succeed and enjoy, has just been super, super cool for me. I think that's the biggest thing that's been a testament for is, you get good, hardworking people together and good stuff happens. So.
Okay, so tell me about that. So what's the team maybe around you like? I mean, do you maybe work alone a lot of times? Or are they really big group projects where there's a lot of guys doing one specific task, or even just working on, is it a bigger project than the whole, or is a lot of smaller ones? Like, what does that maybe day-to-day look like?
Yeah, it's kind of like a mix, honestly. I would say that, most front offices, there aren't like a ton of people. And I think one of the cool dynamics of it is that a lot of the people within the group are kind of specialized in a certain thing. And so for me, kind of like the specialization is that kind of back end software development. But along with that, we all have kind of like the shared passion for basketball and sport as a whole. And so for that, thing, we collaborate on stuff, we collaborate with ideas, people will come to the analytics group with ideas and our manager, and then he'll relay them back to me, and it's back and forth. So it's kind of something where you're kind of called upon to, do your specific task, but then at the same time, it's a collaborative environment where everybody's ideas feed in. So.
Definitely, no, that's incredible, right? To know that there's that back and forth, and that the team is receptive to all that, and that they're obviously, right, to listen to what you guys have to say. And I mean, from what I could tell, it's kind of working out pretty well on the basketball court. If from my humble opinion of seeing you guys win so many games, so that's obviously going pretty well. Do you get to travel with the team at all, or is it all mostly remote? Like, how does that work?
I have not. So
okay,
so,
because I was going to say, because
so.
when you were at MSG, I was going to say I'd have to come see it, but obviously the game was a little while ago. Whether it's the next one, whether it's actually the whole the Nets game, the Nets game already happened too, so you wouldn't be coming to New York. But I'll definitely be seeing you in Vegas. I have some customized merch for you, so
My goodness.
remember that. I owe you some merch in July next year. But that'll be a lot of fun.
Heck yeah, I'll meet him.
Oh, it's gonna be so much fun.
Yeah.
But one real quick thing I have to ask this: how difficult has it been for you to overcome F-Zero GX's story mode? It seems like it's been something that you've been really struggling with.
I've shelved it bro. So like, I still have basically my video game playing habits are like bad. Like I'll get like really into like one game and I'll like get super frustrated with it, and then I'll just like keep hammering away at it for like months on end or something like that, and then I'll just stop and play it. I haven't touched F-Zero GX in years, man. I think I got to like the last chapter in the story mode, and like then I just couldn't get it, and I'm like, all right, enough of this. But yeah, I still got a lot of love for my GameCube games, and yeah, someday we'll finish that.
So what games what's your biggest game that you're playing right now?
So there's a game called Teamfight Tactics. It's an offshoot of League of Legends. During quarantine, I started to play it like a lot. I had a couple friends that kind of got into it, and like I kind of got obsessed with it. I got pretty good at it. So like within the ranks, there's like it goes like iron, bronze, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, master, grandmaster, challenger. I about halfway through last year, I had hit challenger. And so I was in like the top 250 in the server of North America. And so I was pretty good. But then like I slipped and I fell back into Grandmaster, and then I like obsessively was trying to get back into Challenger and I couldn't do it. But anyway, so that's been a long road back to me. I just kind of want to finish there for once and then kind of have that feather in my cap that I was able to do it. But that's been the biggest one for me. I'm trying to think of other games. I've loved Pokemon. I'm a big fan of. I used to play a ton of that. Guitar Hero I played a lot of when I was younger and stuff like that. I'm big into rhythm games. So yeah, outside of work, I'm a dork, man. Like I love my movies, I love my shows, I love my video games. And, that's that.
It's definitely a fun time. And you mentioned how you were the best in North America. So it got me thinking about just like the world in general and being worldwide. So what was it? What were you going to Japan for when you got stopped at the airport for that, when you were on that TV show? And
I love that.
What happened? That was cool.
I love the research that's been done for this. So yeah, that was so fun. It was, so what had happened was that in the Tokyo Narita airport, I guess that they have a show that runs on Tokyo TV where they basically just interview foreigners about like why they've come to Japan and stuff like that. And then like, I don't know why, but in Japan, they're big into these shows where like people sit in bubbles at the corners and they just like commentate videos and stuff like that. But so we happened to get stopped for it. And then they just asked me some questions and stuff like that. At the time, I had gone to Japan with the intent of seeing my grandparents, but I didn't have their phone number and I didn't like have a way to contact them. So I just like wrote them a letter and then just kind of like showed up. And so they asked me about that in the airport and I was just like, yep, that's the plan. So that was the thing. But anyway, so that was the genesis of that.
Yeah, so there's just so many things so cool. And there's probably a long list. A lot of research was done for this show, but I did not scour the ends of your Twitter account like crazy, maybe a little too much. But definitely had a lot of fun with this episode, both in terms of the basketball stuff and some of the extracurriculars that got a little out of hand. But definitely a good time and some great energy. And I'll definitely be seeing you in Vegas with I'll spoil the surprise. There's some Gen Z Hoops customized socks with your face on them. So you'll see them on the Instagram or on the Twitter. Afterwards, we'll be texting. We'll get you all set up there. This episode's going to go live, and I know so many people are going to relate to your story and be interested in what you do. Right, you being so young and in this world is just incredible. And I love talking to more people that are around the same age as me that are actually doing it. So this is so much fun, and we're going to see each other soon. Can't wait, man. It's going to be fun.
Absolutely, much love to you, man. Appreciate the time, and thank you so much for having me on. This has been fun.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.